Good evening. I'd like to call to order the work session for the April 13th, 2022 Design Review Committee. With that, can get a, do we want to do roll call? Yeah. Thanks.
Temple. Zabala.
Here.
Marsh.
Aye. Here.
Aguilar.
Here.
Erstad.
Here.
4 present, 3 absent.
Got 2 items on our work session this morning. Starting off with DRH 22-00042. This time I turn it over to you, Josh, for staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. So tonight we are here for a couple of work sessions, the first of which is a follow-up on DRH 22-00042 at 818 West and Morrison Park Drive. This was approved at the March 9th, 2022 Design Review Committee hearing with the requirement to come back for a public work session to discuss some specific items. Those items were details on the proposed window systems, the building materials and finishes, and the parking and structure screening. So for a reminder, on the screen here is the location of the property. It is located north of Van Morrison Park Drive, just to the west of Capitol Boulevard. Lusk Street is on the western boundary, and then Sherwood Street is on the northern boundary. The applicant proposed a new 5-story mixed-use building containing 91 residential units, ground floor retail, some structured parking. In the drawings presented at the hearing on March 9th, they were given some direction, some items to work on, and they have submitted drawings that they feel address those. The first bullet point in the memo that was distributed for tonight's work session was the proposed window systems. We did not have those ahead of time. They do have those tonight, so I'll let the applicant speak to those, to the fit and finish of the windows proposed. In regards to building materials and finishes, they did submit a material sample board up there in front of you, detailing the materials for the structure. They have proposed a black painted metal mesh for the garage screening, with 2x2 grid system. They have included stucco in 3 different colors, off-white, a gray, and a black. Black anodized aluminum storefront window systems, and then fiber cement lap siding in a natural wood finish. For the parking structure and screening, again, they did propose the 2x2 metal mesh material that's on the materials board there. They felt this presented a more consistent aesthetic with the proposed building and would more adequately screen vehicles. The panel heights of the screening have been reduced below the podium to finish out that area between the proposed parking deck and the stucco above in a pattern that they feel is more consistent with the overall building appearance. And have also matched up it to align with the edges of things like bump outs, stucco reveals, and edges of windows. So I know the applicant has a more detailed presentation about the changes to the design. There was a narrative included in the application materials before you tonight that details kind of a punch list of things they addressed after the last hearing. Parapet heights were changed. Building material massing was made more consistent on different elements of the building, which they felt was in direct response to comments made at the last committee hearing. So I know the applicant is present. They have a presentation to give on those specific changes that they've made. Our recommendation is that as long as those window details are presented satisfactorily, that they have met the conditions of the requirement for the work session. And with that, I would stand for any questions, or we'll turn it over to the applicant.
Great. Thanks, Josh. Any questions for the applicant this time? Seeing none, would the applicant like to come forward and present? If you would, please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. TJ Winger with Babcock Design Group, 800 West Main, Boise, Idaho. I just want to say thank you, especially for your comments. Committee member Erstead, you guys gave some good feedback and we heard those, and I think the design is much better based on some of those comments, so appreciate that. But I wanted to turn some time over to Valerie. She's going to go through the slides and present tonight to you guys, and we'll stand for questions after she finishes.
Hello, everyone. So to further elaborate on what Josh was talking about, we made some modifications to the materials. We are showing below and on the screen above those 3 stucco colors. It's the white, the gray, and the black. The black will only be in between the storefront sections, so it's not very prevalent throughout the whole project, and the south entrance to bring attention to the south entrance. And the white and gray will be throughout the whole project. We decided to choose that cherry wood look for the fiber cement. And that is also done throughout the project as well as accent points. The metal mesh is going to be that 2x2 metal mesh. We felt like that would be better for transparency than the 4x4, or sorry, it would prevent transparency into the parking garage. And we just felt like it would look better. We have spaced the metal panels 3 inches from each other, and I'll show a detail later in the document. So the metal panels are spaced 3 inches from each other and 9 inches from the top of the podium. Another change that we made regarding the materials is we changed the finish around the podium floor that's exposed. We changed it from that gray color to the white color because we felt like it would blend from the upper floors to the lower floors a lot better than having that gray that's separating the two. You can go to the next slide. So here are some perspectives that we have done since the last meeting that are a little bit more realistic. The one on the left is the southwest entrance. So that would be the south entrance into the housing development. And the one to the right is that view of the cafe. Another thing that I forgot to mention for the materials is we also added that trim around the windows. That's 2 inches, and the color of the trim matches the adjacent materials. Another thing we have changed and modified since the last work session is we have lowered the parapet heights. There was a big difference in the parapets before, and we felt like it didn't flow as well, and there was this lack of balance. So we have lowered the parapets throughout the whole project just so that it looks to have more balance and more cohesion. And then we also have raised the podium level by 12 inches. It's not that noticeable in the perspectives or the elevations, but the highest parapet is only at 67 feet, 6 inches. So we still are meeting requirements. So could you go to the elevations next? Sorry. We have also brought in the slope of the grade in this elevations. As you can see, we've adjusted the stem wall heights to correspond with the grade sloping. If you go to the next elevation, thank you. So on the west elevation, which is the entrance into the leasing and amenity space, this space will be located 4 feet above the ground level. And this is because it needs to be 2 feet above the floodplain zone. So you see that patio space with the ramp and the stairs, that's how people will be entering the leasing space. And then going further on the elevations, we have continued the language of the upper floors down to the bottom floors. So the materials from the upper floors are brought down to the bottom floor. As you can see, that white is continuing down, the gray is continuing down. Another way we tried to tie into the upper floors is what Josh discussed earlier about modifying the size of the metal mesh panels and their locations so that the sides of the metal metal panel sections align with like lines above. So it's either an edge of a wall or edge of a window or some other design element from above, just so there's that linear continuation from above. And then next, we also furred out some walls at certain locations to create a more robust look. So if you look, Josh, could you scroll in, sorry, just to like that top elevation on the south, just so you can see the corner. So on the corner elements and also certain facades throughout the building, we furred out the bottom level so that finish from the bottom level continues all the way up to the upper level. So it's just one plane. And we just wanted to bring more of a heavy structure throughout the project. So there's like a sense of grounding to it on the corners and also special areas of interest. So the other areas of interest other than the corners are by that south entrance where the sign is for the Capital Student Housing. And then if you scroll down, Josh, a little bit, on the west side, right next to the entrance by the patio as well, and just creating more focal points throughout the project. Another thing we did was we also raised the canopies to align with the bottom of the podium floor. We just felt like there would be a better horizontal flow with those design elements aesthetically. And then they are suspended by canopy rods to the exterior finish behind them. And then if you scroll up a little bit, sorry, for that south facade, we changed the materials outside of the cafe to be that fiber cement panels. We felt like it would create this more of a distinction between the two separate uses. So it's drawing your eye to that corner that's going to be the cafe, and also is highlighting that it is different than the rest of the uses there. We felt like that would be a good way to bring attention to that space. And in response to that, we took away the wood that was by the facade by the south entrance where that Capital Housing signage is, because we decided to have it correlate more to the housing aspect. So if we were going to use the wood to distinguish the cafe area, we wanted the white stucco to blend in with the rest of the housing and highlight that entrance and not say that it was any different than the rest of the building. And then we also changed all the sign colors to black just so that they pop a little bit more. And those were all the items that we've addressed since then. Oh, yes, sorry. If you keep going down. Yeah, those are some floor plans also. Those are some floor plans also for, if you guys want to look at that later. So that's the detail of the window. So it's going to be popping out that 2 inches right there.
Mind zooming in on that just a little bit, Josh? Like maybe just the head one. Yeah. Thanks.
The goal on that, sorry if you can hear me, just the goal on that detail around the window, we explored a few different scenarios where we were using a contrasting color and a contrasting material. And it's when we rendered it, it seemed to not feel right. So we wanted to do a detail that would give emphasis to the window, but not like contrast and clash. And so we tried to find a simple detail that could meet the criteria that was required to put on the project, but give a nice tie into the overall composition.
And Josh, you could go to one of the elevations or the perspectives and zoom into a window so that they could see that as well. So the frame of the window will be that white, and then the trim will be the color that matches the material behind it.
So the score joint, like on the head, is aligned with the very top of the trim. Is that how that's, and it continues, does it continue
Yes.
over the trim then, that score? Or?
Yeah.
That's what you're seeing.
Okay.
Yeah, you can zoom in a little bit more too. If, I don't know how, does it go in more? Yeah. That white, yeah.
And then the same, Mr. Chair, on the bottom of the gray, it would pick up that detail along the bottom edge right there.
Okay. Questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Stead.
I just want to say I appreciate that you guys, without going back to the drawing board, you revisited this and made a lot of very intentional decisions. I was looking through this package ahead of time and I noticed those frames aligning with the elements above, and I thought that's just a nice detail. So I do think this is a more refined project, and I appreciate the effort you put in there. If you would indulge me one little comment, I think you're missing an inset wood piece on your east elevation where that it's shown there in the bottom left corner on that last where you've got this rhythm of your gray and white pieces as they step out. But right where it meets the corner, that section between the gray and then the turn is not regularly sized with your other segments. And then it kind of creates this just sort of amorphous wall context. And I think that just to kind of continue your rhythm and accentuate that corner a little bit, I think you ought to include that inset wood there. Otherwise, I really appreciate all the materials you pulled together. And I think that this is a much improved project at this point, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Stead. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Are you identifying that portion of the wall where the keynote material call out 1 is pointing to on that elevation?
Yeah, right there. I think it probably corresponds with keynote 14 would be where the break probably ought to set back, or even a little bit to the right of that. But just based off of the sort of rhythm that's been established with the other pieces there, I think that would be just a nice added little cherry on top to set that piece back in.
Only other question I had is, so it sounds like some of the parapets got lower. Are you guys still providing, are you some screen walls on top for some mechanical equipment then?
Yes, we still are. And the units are placed on the roof behind the tallest parapets.
Okay.
So,
Other questions for the applicant?
No.
Great. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any members of the public wishing to testify to this item on our work session tonight? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion of the testimony, bring it back to the committee for any discussion. I think you had some good points, Mr. Stad, and looks like they put forth some nice design thought on their resubmittal items. Nice material board. Looks like this is pretty straightforward. If anybody has any other concerns?
I don't have any other concerns, Mr. Chair. No.
Sounds good. I'd be open for a motion then.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move to approve the work session drawings dated received March 22nd, 2022, and the window details as presented at the public work session per the discussion and findings contained in the work session memo for the hearing dated April 13th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Okay, any discussion? Want to add anything on your comment to the?
I would like to add that as a condition to include that inset wood piece per the established rhythm of the facade. I don't know exactly how to phrase that.
The east elevation, was that?
On the east elevation.
Is that okay with the maker of the motion?
Yes.
Okay, so moved and seconded. With that, Christina, will you please all have a roll call and vote?
Sabala,
Aye.
Marsh,
Aye.
Aguilar,
Aye.
Erstad,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Great, thank you very much. Second item to be heard is item number 2 on our work session is DRH 22-00003. The location on this is 1722 South Lata Street. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Rachel and staff for presentation.
Hello.
Hi.
This is my first time in front of you people, so I'm, excuse me if I'm a little nervous. I'm not a great public speaker.
Yeah, no problem. If you just state your name and address.
Chelsea Whitney. I'm with Dropline Designs, and the address is 2819 West Jefferson Street.
Okay, great. Okay.
Thanks for your patience, Mr. Chairman. We'll get there in just a second.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Rachel Farrell, and I'm a design review planner for City of Boise. And this presentation is to satisfy conditions from the February 9th hearing on project DRH 22-00003. The project is to construct 5 single-family dwellings on 6 lots located at 1722 South Latah Street. And the application was approved at the February 9th Design Review Committee with a condition requiring additional details to be submitted for review at a public work session. In response to the conditions of approval, the applicant has submitted revised drawings and additional construction details for review and approval. The condition as summarized says that the applicant shall return to a public work session to review design changes regarding color choices, materials, and roof line modulation. In regard to site design, the applicant submitted a revised site plan that shows an update to the front setbacks and that they were reduced by 2 feet to better align with the north neighboring properties. This allowed the detached garages to be in line with lots 15, 16. The new elevations show that the stone columns near the front door entrance were reduced from 2 to 1. The number of colors were reduced on each structure. On lots 15, 16, additional windows were added to the first floor front elevation. Porch shed roofs on each structure were oriented differently. And on lot 15, 16, the shed roof was removed and replaced with a gable roof. Based on these revised elevations and color changes, staff feels the conditions from the February 9th hearing have been satisfied. And with this includes staff's presentation, and myself and the applicant are here to answer questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. Any questions for staff at the moment?
None at the moment.
None. Turn it over to the applicant. Again, Chelsea, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, yes, so my first time here, so forgive me if I'm not really sure exactly where to start, but reviewing the conditions, we were in agreement with all of the conditions on the approval. We made the modifications as requested, and the team feels that the design was improved through those modifications. On lot 15, 16, as mentioned, we removed the shed roof and went with the front gable. We did oscillate on the site plan in order to align with the neighboring lots. We reduced the stone columns down to 1 on the front to simplify those elevations along with the color palette. And on lot 15, 16, we did add additional glazing on the front to increase the, there on that right-hand side, we went from a single window to the 4 that you see. And then we also brought in the garages off of the alley and to align all of the garages on the back side there. So where they articulated into the alley, we brought those back to allow more space in the rear.
Is there an elevation of the lot 15, 16, I guess the long elevation facing Nez Perce in the packet? There it is. Okay, so now you can see part of that roof coming down, kind of keeps that wall from looking quite so tall. Okay.
Yes, and we step back. If you can kind of see that on the front elevation there that we do step back to give some articulation on that side.
Gotcha. Any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
was it a requirement to move the garages further off the alley?
Let me look back here.
Mr. Chair and committee members, from my recollection, there wasn't a requirement to move the garages. I think that this was just done maybe by the applicant with some discussion about the alleyway and possibly like the garage is not lining up. I think there was a comment, but they weren't required to move them, I don't think.
Okay, thank you. Okay, provide some additional parking as well, right?
Yes, I don't see any formal comment, but that when we redesigned the plans, that comment came in at the same. So perhaps that was just a comment, not a formal comment.
Okay.
I mean, personally, I think, if you've got 22 feet there, that's generally plenty of space for a car to get onto. I think the extra 5 feet is probably overkill, and I'm sure these are probably for rent, right?
One of them will be for rent and the other for
rent.
purchase.
I think, the extra 5 feet of yard space would probably be appreciated by buyers, but I'm not going to require that. I just,
Okay.
if there was a driver on your end as far as why that decision was made, then so be it. But I don't think we should be encouraging more paving.
Yeah, what is the new proposed driveway depth?
27.
27?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess by aligning it, the lot 1516 has a fixed garage with the structure. So I guess that might have been part of the design intent too, but I would agree with you there too, Mr. Stead. Any other questions for the applicant though?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Ball.
just one question. This is minor. The only thing that I saw there that kind of left me wondering was the remaining stone column. It's the only stone on the whole project. And just wondering if it would make sense, since you've got a predominantly board and batten panelized look, horizontal siding, if it would be worth considering removing the stone, but keeping the same physical mass, not just a single 4x4 or 6x6 column there, but doing something in a more articulated wood column look, as opposed to the stone, which is the only odd material left on the project right now.
Okay,
Yeah, I guess the alternate be some of those little small shed roofs that are those kind of accent pieces. Those could certainly be stone as well if you wanted to keep some of the stone to add a little bit to the wall surface too. It's a little pop, but yeah, that is, yeah, with the removal of that second column, short of the fact that every building kind of looks like one big long building, and so you get a repetition of the stone going down the street. So I don't know. It's gonna,
Yeah.
Well, any other questions for the applicant?
No.
No, thank you for coming up.
Okay,
Any
thank
other
you.
comments?
what's that?
Any other comments? Okay.
No, and I do have, with these comments, are these, you mentioned the driveway was not a recommendation, but not a formal comment. With the stone column, is this a recommend? As far as my conveyance back to the client, is this something that we'll have another hearing for? Is this a recommendation to get into the design, or is this a requirement of the design for the stone column?
I think we could make that recommendation in our motion, that it's an allowed option to be entertained by the applicant.
Okay, great.
If that's willing by, okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
At this time, I would close up. Well, I guess, is there any member of the public wishing to testify? Yes, please come forward. And if you would, please state your name and address for the record. Okay, thank you.
Hello, I'm Julie Hulvey, 3707 Nez Perce. I was here at the February 9th hearing. And when I saw the revisions to the plans that were made, I decided I needed to come back again, and I'm going to get some slides done here with Rachel. Slide 1, please, Rachel. I have some real concerns, and in particular about the comments that have already been offered. Okay, I'm going to be reading my own work. I'd like to address the issue of design, impact on the neighborhood, and codes and regulations. This development comes on the heels of another skinny lot job adjacent to the Northeast property. Using substandard lot ordinances, the Design Review Committee on February 9th clearly stated that paving the alley is a condition of the project. The transcribed minutes of the hearing confirm this condition. Changes have been suggested to the setbacks and the garages that do not enhance the design or fit and bulk of this project in the neighborhood. No unusual conditions exist as to the lot areas themselves. Best practices seem pretty clear and should be used. Because I live next to the project, my citizen involvement is to work for best outcomes. Next, please. This is the regulation from our friends at ACHE policy 7210.2. In red, you see clearly stated, if the proposed development takes access from an alley, the developer will be required to pave the entire width of the right-of-way from the nearest public street to and abutting the development. Why would anybody negotiate away elements to improve a development? My concern is that that is not on the conditions of today's paperwork. That doesn't mean it's gone, but I'm concerned about it. Slide 3, please. This is the Boise City Code 110603.3D5A. Also saying a paved driveway that extends to the edge of the street pavement of the roadway or alley will also be required. There are no reasons cited for not enforcing this. Slide 4, please. On December 9th, the committee deliberated and asked for some design changes, roof line changes, and added the condition of this land use agency to pave the alley. This is a dusty mess, and more cars on the unfinished right-of-way impact the neighbors negatively. You can see I'm basing some of my comments on the assumption that this condition has been removed, and I'm not certain that that is the case. On continuing, the PDS document for tonight admits the alley is to be paved, and that is causing me huge anxiety. The document does include the design aspects from the previous hearing, public hearing. Slide 5, please. Some notable changes were made in the right direction. I compliment them on that. The gable roof, the porch roofs, the stone columns, the coloring in the windows. Item 6, however, is a surprise. The large garages are positioned toward the dwellings. This creates a visual parking lot for the neighbors and the neighborhood. This is discouraged, and I've not seen this in other places. Slide 6, please. This is the assessor's image. I've indicated my front area with the fat red arrow on the bottom. Also shown is the front setback of the still existing homes, 10 to 12 feet, and the placement of the garage from 1720 and 1718, the large skinny house duplex you see at the top there, for the garage in the alley at 22 feet and some fraction of a foot from the far side, the east side of the alley. So you can see that the garage next door is on the alley. This is what is recommended, and I have seen much of this. Next slide, please. This image is really important. For the concept of skinny homes, alley loaded, it is now, but was not before the previous hearing, that you move the garages to the 47-foot point in from the west side, the left side of the alley. Calculating this is dedicating 40% of the land area to garages, buildings, and parking, and proposed open driveways. I'm now feeling sick. How could this even be considered? This parking garage and parking change is taking a total of 7244 square feet. The entire parcel is 0.42 acres. And the math there says 40% of this development is being dedicated to garages and driveways across from the front windows of other homes. This is entirely incompatible and destroys the quiet enjoyment of our home and is incompatible with the neighborhood. This should not proceed. You can feel my anxiety, I hope. Next slide, please. Here again is advice from the district which manages the alley, the public right of way. Part 1 there, 7210 is a repeat, but looking at the bottom part, 7210.33. In the yellow, setbacks for structures taking access from the alley should be closely coordinated with the land use agency, that's us, you, the city. The setbacks shall either discourage parking within the alley, where it may partly block or occur within the right of way, or allow adequate area for one perpendicular pad. In order to discourage parking, building setback shall be minimal from the alley right of way line, while still achieving the required 20 feet of backup space from a garage, you guys just said this, or other parking structure to the opposite side of the alley. That is a 4-foot setback and a 16-foot alley for 20 feet. So the parking in the alley is really prohibited. But now moving the garages, it's putting double the amount of parking as required. And it's just what we're going to be looking at our front windows. Next slide, please. My general concern is this builder is trying to accomplish goals with this design that may be incompatible with the skinny house ordinance, in fact and in spirit. Better coordination and fit to the neighborhood is possible. And coordination is a principal reason for ordinances and design review bodies. Next slide, please. Specifically, the redesign of the housing fronts has improved the appearance. The roof on lots 15 and 16 is still very high, as is the second-story wall. I'd like to see you please lower the south wall and the roof line so as not to overwhelm the one-story structures adjacent. I feel the design has gone halfway to where it needs to go on this item. Additionally, that's a southern exposure and it's going to bake. It's going to be very hot. More roof protruding down over the side of the wall would be a very big benefit to the people inside the building. Next slide, please. Another specific concern, the garage proposal is incompatible with the neighborhood and seems to defy the purpose of the skinny house concept. Garages should align with the existing alley loaded garage, such as recommended. Cars who take parking from the alley should not be allowed to park in their own, only be allowed to park in their own garages. Let me say that again. Cars who take parking from the alley should only be allowed to park in their own garages. No parking in alleys. To ask the neighbors to look at a sea of cars is slighting. Additionally, the open space has been minimized, making for a less desirable living experience inside the homes. And beyond lot 14 will be total shade. Next slide, please. My perspective, new construction is desirable when it's thoughtful. My concern, and likely that of other homeowners, is the bulk of this design overwhelms us. By designing homes with several bedrooms and making them rentals, the prediction is for many transient residents and many cars. But like the developer said last time, they could take the bus. Comments about the need for parking from neighbors are to serve more as an insight to the developer regarding other people's thoughts and feelings and our relationship to our built environment. We sure don't want to look out our window at your alley parking lot. Our plea to the committee is to improve this proposal as requested. One more slide, please. That alley is blocked off. The previous skinny home duplex was built, and this is what it looked like right before it was built. It was not blocked off. There was no fence preventing the alley from being driven straight through with just a few modifications and a little bit of cleanup. It's what brought the conflict of the alley into perspective from the previous builder, but yet now I'm just pointing it out. So thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I hope you can see what I see, feel what I feel, pay the tax I pay, and still not want to cash it in. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Any other members of the public? Oh, nope. I'm just seeing if there's any other members of the public wishing to testify. Doesn't appear to be. Would the applicant like to have a rebuttal to any of the statements, the previous?
Yes, absolutely. I, as a homeowner and living in the Ada County and within a very urban area off of Jefferson, I understand the concern for parking and the concern for, I believe you mentioned transient residents. I don't understand that the intent of this project is a series of rentals. They're designed more for permanent residents. My side on the, in the universe on the design side, we do get a lot of feedback for street parking, people's concerns about parking on the street. So it's sort of a catch-22. We don't want parking on the street and we don't want parking in the alley. And I do sympathize with the view and the quality of the neighborhood. However, I'd like to just keep in consideration that we can reduce that back and gain more yard space, definitely. However, I'm not in agreement with the facade on lot 1516 on the corner there. I feel that the redesigned gable, the additional glazing, and the landscaping there should alleviate any concerns for that facade. Those trees in that area at maturity are 30 to 40 feet. So that big wall is easy to say in the, when we look at these black and white front on elevations, they do seem more extreme, but in the real world, we live in a perspective view with additional landscaping. I feel that the landscaping that we're providing in that area breaks up that facade even further than the architecture does.
Thank you.
And thank you.
With that, we'll close the public portion of the testimony, bring back to the committee for discussion, unless anybody has any questions for the applicant. Seeing none, close the public portion and open it up for discussion, possibly a motion.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Stead.
I think to directly address the alley parking question, just above the highlight section of the alley recommendations, it called out that in order to discourage parking within the alley right of way, which I think it's important to note is a distinct difference from parking within the alley. I have heard a lot of conversations about people worried about on-street parking. I think anytime someone does a new development in any location, that's usually one of the first questions that comes up. So I think that if the developer believes that this is an aspect of his project that is important from a user utility standpoint, from a neighborhood standpoint, to not negatively impact those that already try to park on the street or drive on the street. I don't see anything that could really force us to put those garages 4 feet off of the right of way.
Yeah, I think there's some good points to that. I kind of, sometimes it's hard to even have us encourage our developers to provide a little bit of additional parking towards the rear. I mean, alleys are service-oriented areas with garage doors and trash cans and the rest of it. So I do understand that there is, in these neighborhoods, there are backyard windows and such that look upon that, and certainly don't want it to be but there is the nice thing with it. There is a little breakup of landscaping between some of the garage driveways. I think it's probably more of a plus than the neighborhood than to have a parking shortage. I would agree with the applicant on the elevation too on 1516 by pushing back the second story, providing a small portion of the roof that kind of dissects the ground floor from the second floor. And the gable change on the top, I think is a good improvement. My thoughts anyway.
I'd also just point out on the landscape plan, a significant amount of screening there directly adjacent to the alley that even prior to maturity should do a lot to limit the view down the alley of any cars that would be parked there.
Any other comments? Anybody want to take a stab at a motion? I'm sorry, the public portion of the testimony is closed for this at this point.
Mr. Chairman, I would also assume that the conditions for paving the alley up to full ACHD requirements are required. They're out of our purview, but they've been clearly stated, and that the applicant would have to comply with all ACHD requirements as far as improvements to the alley for the length of the alley.
Yep, good point. I think in the revised materials, there isn't anything that is requesting the elimination of that condition of approval.
Yeah,
correct.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Stein.
I move to approve the updated work session drawings dated received February 28th, 2022 per the discussion and findings contained in the work session memo for the hearing dated April 13th, 2022.
So moved. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, I would second that with the just the one footnote that the committee recommends perhaps the applicant and or the design team consider the possibility of removing the stone on the columns and using another material, but that would be up to their choice.
The maker of the motion accept that modification.
I do accept either remove it or lean into it harder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So moved and seconded with that particular motion. Now for discussion, would you also like to include a motion concerning the ability for the applicant to change the depth of the driveways if they wanted to at all? Or not necessarily?
I don't know how that really falls into the motion, given that it hadn't been commented on prior to this point.
Okay.
And it was changed kind of on their own. I would recommend that they make it as minimally long as possible while either fulfilling their purpose of having an out of right-of-way parking space or only having as much space as required to back a car up into the right of way.
Mr. Chairman, I agree. I think that area there, and I understand the lady's concern back there, but if from what I recall, 4 of these residences are intended to be basically single family residents, with the lots 15 and 16 being the only one that would be termed a rental, if you will, by the way the plan is configured. I would assume, like any family, beyond their cars, they're going to have a travel trailer or snowmobiles on a trailer or a boat that are going to have to find a home somewhere, either offsite or if it's available here or on the street. So I think I think it gives an opportunity to get rid of some of the clutter that would normally end up on the street side, and maybe be less impacting to the general neighborhood. So I would leave that alone.
Okay. We got a motion. Any other discussion? We have everybody clear on the motion? Okay. With that, Christina, you do a roll call vote?
Zabala,
Aye.
Marsh,
Aye.
Aguilar,
Aye.
Erstad.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll just run through the agenda real quick and we can take a quick break before the 6 o'clock meeting. So we start with items 1, 2, 3, and 4, all deferred. We're recommending deferral of 1, 2, 3, and 4 to the May 11th hearing. Item number 5, we are planning on hearing that one. We expect some public testimony.
Okay.
Item number 6, we'll propose for consent.
Okay.
Item number 7 is a deferral to May 11th. And item number 8, we will propose for consent.
I'd like to hear item number 8. If that's
Okay,
with
perfect.
everybody.
All right, and without any other changes or comments, we'll see you in about 4 minutes.
Thanks, Josh. Welcome. I'd like to call the April 13th, 2022 Design Review Committee meeting to order. Christina, you please call the roll.
Simple,
Here.
Zabala,
Here.
Rudine, Marsh,
Hi, here.
Aguilera,
Here.
Zuckerman, Erstad,
Here.
5 present, 2 absent.
Thank you. And next thing is motion on the March 9th, 2020 minutes.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I would move for approval of the hearing minutes of the March 9th, 2022 Boise City Design Review Committee meeting as submitted by staff.
Thank you. Christine, will you please call the, oh, sorry. Move.
Second.
Second, thank you. Christine, you please call the roll.
Simple,
Aye.
Zabala,
Aye.
Marsh,
Albert Keys, I was not in attendance that day.
Aguilar,
Aye.
Erstad,
Aye.
all in favor.
Great. Thank you very much. Tonight we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items up for deferral. All these items are up for the deferral to the May 11th, 2022 hearing. So the first item is item number 1, DRH 21-00376. The location is 6259 South Pleasant Valley Road. It's for the construction of a new 1,080,289 square foot warehouse. Is there any member of the public wishing to speak on this item tonight that cannot make the May 11th date? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item for deferral, which is item number 2. It's DRH 21-00441. The location is 2500 East Freight Street. It's for the construction of a new approximately 185,300 square foot industrial building and associated site improvements. Again, is there any member of the public wishing to testify or to speak to this item who cannot make the May 11th, 2022 date? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item for deferral is item number 3. It's DRH 21-00448. Location is 1201 West Grove Street. It's for the construction of an approximately 7-story multifamily residential building with 305 units, structured parking and associated site improvements on a property located in a C5D zone. Any members of the public wishing to speak to this item that cannot make the May 11th, 2022 date? Seeing none, we'll move to the next item for deferral, which is item number 4. It's DRH 22-00030. Location is 5522 West Franklin Road. It's to construct 4 new multifamily residential buildings with 120 units, a clubhouse building, associated site improvements. Again, is there any member of the public wishing to speak to this item tonight that cannot make the May 11th, 2022 date? Seeing none, move on to the final item for deferrals, which is item number 7. It's DRH 22-00074. The location is 8675 South Warehouse Way and 2392 East Winco Court. It's for the construction of 7 new industrial buildings, totaling approximately 1,190,280 square feet, and associated site improvements on a property in an M2D zone. Finally, is there any member of public that is wishing to testify to that item tonight that cannot make the May 11th, 2022 date? Seeing none, that concludes our items for our deferrals tonight. And with that, I would be open to take a motion on those deferrals.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I would move for recommending deferral of agenda items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7. A deferral to the May 11th, 2022 hearing of the Design Review Committee.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Christina, will you please do the roll call? That was a motion by and second by Aguilar.
Simple,
Aye.
Zabala,
Aye.
Marsh,
Aye.
Aguilar,
Aye.
Erstad.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you very much. We have one item to be considered for tonight's consent agenda. Quick here. Which is item number 6. Item number 6 is DRH 22-00072. The location is 3110 East Barber Valley Drive. It's for the construction of an approximately 11,200 square foot single-story daycare facility with associated site improvements on an SPOD Barber Valley specific plan zone. Is the applicant present tonight? Does not appear that the applicant, oh, sorry, online. And is the applicant, are you in agreement with the recommendations, recommended conditions of approval?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Let the record show that the applicant is in agreement with the recommended conditions of approval. Are there any members of the public wishing to testify in opposition to this item tonight? Seeing none public, anyone online? Do not see any other online. That concludes our items to be considered for our consent agenda tonight. And with that, I would be open for a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move to approve DRH 22-00072 on consent.
Moved.
Second.
And seconded. So moved by Mr. Stad, seconded by Mr. Simple. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Christine, will you please call the roll?
Simple,
Aye.
Zabala,
Aye.
Marsh,
Aye.
Aguilar,
Aye.
Erstad.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you very much. First item to be heard tonight will be item number 5. Item number 5 is DRH 22-00066. Location is 2350 West Kootenai Street. It's for the construction of 5 new multifamily residential buildings with 85 units, a clubhouse building, and associated site improvements on a property in an RTD zone. With this, I'll turn it over to staff for their presentation.
Good evening again, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Rachel Farrell, and I'm a design review planner for the city of Boise. And the project before you is DRH 22-00066. This project is located at 2350 West Kootenai on approximately 7.39 acres, a triangular shaped lot east of South Vista Avenue, and is proposing to construct 5 new multifamily residential buildings totaling 85 units, a clubhouse, and associated site improvements. The site was reviewed and approved under PUD 16-00027 and modified under CUP 18-00064. Due to access issues with the Union Pacific Railroad off West Kootenai, the site plan was revised to include only one access off public street to serve the site. The new street would be constructed off Robert Street and would be dedicated as public right-of-way, terminating in a roundabout near the entrance of the multifamily development. In the report dated September 21st, 2018, Ada County Highway District reviewed the project under the original PUD and CUP and concluded that the addition of 85 units would generate approximately 462 vehicle trips per day, which would not exceed the threshold of 2,000 trips per day for local streets. Therefore, trips from this project would not result in a significant effect on the surrounding area. And additionally, the construction of a new public street would adequately serve the site. The project site is located in the R2D zone and is designated compact. surrounded by railroad tracks, single-family residential, high-density residential, mixed use, and commercial development. The development would include 5 new multifamily buildings consisting of 2 8-plexes, 2 22-plexes, 1 24-plex, and 1 clubhouse building. I would like to point out that in the staff report, it incorrectly calls out that there would be 3 22-plexes, but please note that the proposal is for 2 22-plexes and 1 24-plex, along with the 2 8-plexes. There are proposed pedestrian connections leading along the dedicated streets towards the interior of the site, throughout the site, and along the northern and southern perimeters. The landscape plan includes the required perimeter landscaping and internal parking lot landscaping. Trees are proposed along the pedestrian paths to provide shade and along the northern and southern boundaries adjacent to other residential buildings. Turf sod is proposed to provide open space areas for residents along with balconies. The applicant proposes to provide 142 parking stalls, in which almost all of them are covered, and includes 3 5-stall garages. 104 bicycle parking spaces are also proposed. The buildings are proposed to have a mix of materials such as lap siding and batten board with brick along the base and asphalt shingles, which are appropriate for slope roofs. The mix of materials and colors provide contrast and design interest. The 8-unit complexes and the clubhouse are 2 stories. The 24-unit complex towards the interior of the site is 3 stories, with the 22 complexes proposed as 3 stories, stepping down to 2 stories towards the outer edges of the site to complement the surrounding development. The project meets the 35-foot height limit requirement per the R2 zone. Lastly, these are renderings of proposed garages and the clubhouse. Staff finds that the project complies with the zoning ordinance, design review guidelines, and goals and policies of the comprehensive plan, and would recommend approval with conditions. And this concludes our presentation. Myself and the applicant are available to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Any questions for the staff at the moment? Seeing none, if the applicant is present, if you would please come forward and state your name and address for the record, please.
Mr. Chair, committee members, my name is Jeremy Putman, 725 East 2nd Street in Meridian, Idaho. Sorry, just being accepted as a panelist so I can share my screen. A moment here. There we go. So as stated, we are proposing a 85-unit multifamily complex with a clubhouse and associated, site improvements. We have a plaza with that clubhouse. The site is nestled within these Union Pacific Railroad. The property owner has been working with them for access for a while for access and on the particulars of this project. There are a mix of unit types from 1 bedroom, 1 bath to 2 bedroom, 2 bath and 3 bedroom, 2 bath units. The structures nearest the property lines are all 2-story, just wanting to make sure that we are within 1 or 2-story within context of the neighborhood. As we do get to the eastern edge and eastern center, we do raise that in order to have 3-story structures. The structures along the eastern edge, the 2 22-plexes, which are on the outsides, the north and the south, and then the 24-plex in the center do have elevators for access for the tenants. The clubhouse is going to have an assembly space, an exercise area, and in the kind of the leasing office for community gatherings, things like that. The assembly space is adjacent to an exterior plaza, which will have plantings and a park-like setting in order just for the community to gather there on the interior of the site. It also has a single living unit above for like a caretaker property for somebody to be on site in management there. The 8-plex is made up of 3-bedroom and 2-bedroom units on the ground floor. 22-plex on the 3-story side has the elevator. The 2 and 3-story side is just the standard stairs. We're trying to provide some greater accessibility to the residents that are going to be marketed to for this particular development. The 24-plex is 50% 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and then 25% 1-bed, 1-bath, and then 50%, 25% 3-bedroom, 2-bath units. Just a small picture of the garage, wanting to provide a little bit of architectural interest. So we've kind of undulated those. Here is the facade of the clubhouse. This is the main entry where persons would enter. Over here is the external stair for the caretaker residence above. Again, the 8-plex, we've chose a mix of horizontal siding and brick with some accents of board and batten, trying to break up and provide a little bit of visual interest to contrast the horizontal and vertical lines of the project. Providing accents of the brick, which kind of hearken to that an adjacent development, the Vista Village, which does have some brick accents as well. So just wanting to try and fit within the fabric of the neighborhood in this development. As you can see, we're stepping down for the 22-plex just to make sure that we're within kind of context or understanding the context of the neighborhood we are in. Then here, as you can see, we are breaking up the facade with some undulations, both back and forth, and providing some varying roof lines around the building, as well as some patio spaces that also help break up and provide some negative space, as well as the positive space for the main facade. One just showing here looking at the definition of roof height. There was, well, let me pause and come back. There was one letter that was sent in that had some questions about this development, many of which were handled during the CUP process. One comment was saying that we do exceed the height limit of 35 feet. Looking at the definition in the Boise City Code, it does say the average of the roof height. And so just showing here the bottom of the roof structure and then the max height of the roof structure, we do fall underneath that by a few inches. So we are compliant there, which was also, I guess, taken a look at during the CUP application process. We just wanted to, recognize that there were some comments about this and show that we are addressing them. I'm going to pause sharing this and then share some renders we have of the project. This is kind of an aerial view, kind of hovering above Roberts, looking into the development. So this new road would come in and have a single railroad crossing and culminate here in this roundabout, which would be for utility and fire department access, also access into the rest of the development. We did get some feedback from the city about pathways and things like that, asking for them to be less undulating and more steady. And so this is just a rendering showing that we are planning to go that direction. Move this over. Here's a shot from the center of the parcel of the roundabout, looking back at the clubhouse. Looking at the main avenue entering the facility. A shot of the plaza and the community gathering space with the benches and the park-like setting between just outside the assembly area of the clubhouse. And here is a shot from a balcony on the 22-plex, kind of looking down south at the shade structures that will be provided for majority of the parking stalls. So that's a quick look at our project, and I'd be willing to stand for any questions.
Thank you. Other questions for the applicant from the committee?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I just had a quick question regarding the pathways. It shows that they're on the other side of the railroad tracks. It looks like one of them connects to the roadway, yeah, right here where that car is exiting. That's what the south side of the railroad, right?
Yes.
Does that pathway lead all the way to Kootenai? Will it connect to the sidewalk over there?
This one does, yes.
Okay, and then the other one comes off of the Robert Street area connection there.
Correct. It comes off Roberts and it does terminate down here. There's a small little roundabout, just recognizing it's kind of like a nice path out.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
a question. Is there any connectivity from the complex to Federal Way
No.
pedestrian?
No, there is not.
Is that by design or?
That is by design. So while the property owners the property owners are present, so if we have a specific question about their discussions with Union Pacific, the sidings are less used. The main line, which does run behind there, is more used, and so we did not want to have a crossing there. Union Pacific, in working with them, wanted the crossing on one of the sidings, which is less used. It's very rarely used. It sometimes houses a car there for a few hours, and then it'll come get picked up.
So will there be any fencing along that side?
Yes, there is. If I can zoom in here, we do have some fencing here. Correct. There is, and it's also shown, and maybe I can pull up the landscape and civil plan. There is a fence to. It's not on the. Sorry, I can go back to sharing my screen. There is a fence along that east side.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if there is no intent to connect that northern pathway to Federal Way, and I think for a lot of good reasons, I kind of question the need for it to extend out that far, particularly because it doesn't seem to connect to the development itself anywhere. The same can be said for the one on the south. I'm just a little confused about the purpose of them. Do you expect your tenants to walk all the way out the development, cross the railroad on the western side, and then walk all the way back to get to Kootenai? Or I don't know.
No, I guess that was part of the conditional use application. So in the course of this project, we took over after the conditional use application was approved, but we can certainly look at that. We do recognize that would be a long walk for the residents. The main intent of the walk, we do have many walk paths throughout the development, which would be more appropriate. But if persons wanted to get on a more leisurely or take a longer stroll, they could take those paths if they wished.
I just bring it up because I do see a lot of people probably hopping the railroad tracks across your lawn, and sooner or later you're going to have a lot of unofficial walking paths.
Sure.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr.
I think I'm familiar with this area, and I think the pathway on the south side, kind of touching on committee member Erstad's comments, the south side of the railroad tracks does at least provide pedestrian connectivity to Kootenai, which does cross the railroad tracks and then turns into Protest and leads down off the bench. So they could get to Federal Way that way. It is a little bit longer, but I think there's a bus line that runs down Kootenai. So there does provide that connectivity. And it sounds like there's fencing along all of the interior side of all the railroad tracks to maybe protect from people running across the railroads.
Currently, the fencing is on the property line.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, is there, maybe this is for staff, if they can pull up an aerial photo, because I know on the east side of the railroad tracks, there's some other development, including, I think, some residential.
Yes. Yeah,
But
there
I
is.
mean, I don't know if we need an aerial photo, but
Sure.
if you can indicate kind of where that is.
Yeah, the development is kind of here, maybe about the bottom 2/3. And then as Federal Way gets closer to the parcel, there is not development up here in the kind of the upper, well, actually upper half, but there is development down here.
And the roadways that, sorry, Mr. Chair,
Yes,
if I can follow up, those developments, the roads that come into that, there's lots that back up to the railroad and there's not roads that connect to that railroad right of way from there, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for the applicant? Good. Thank you very much. Are there any members of the public wishing to testify in opposition? Yes, please feel free to come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Mr. Chairman and committee members, I've never been to a committee meeting before, so I'm happy to be here.
Welcome.
My name is Karen Moore, and I live at 1007 South Pico Street. So I am at the eastern edge. So that little development that you had spoken of, those 6 houses along there, I live in that very first one as you turn onto Pico from Federal Way. So when I first got the notice, I wanted to say, I'm a total proponent of infill, and I think this is an attractive project. I just am concerned about the density. When I looked on the Ada County assessor's site, I saw that this is a 6.823 acre parcel. But when you look at what it's assessed for residential, it's 4.185 acres. So for the zoning and the amount that's assessed for residential, it seems like it should be more like 60 units than 85. Now, again, I'm not an expert. I don't know how this kind of like all melts together. But that was one thing that I felt like the density was a little bit too high. And then for me, I know I'm just one resident along Pico Street, but my house was built in 1946. It's 916 square feet. And it backs right up to the railroad tracks there. I bought it in June of 2021. And, you know, the backyard was full of weeds. So I had a landscaping company come in and take all the weeds out and put a nice flagstone patio out there. And if I have a 3-story, 2 at the very end, building backing right up to the railroad tracks, where my property is also a little bit lower, as you come down off of, you know, the bench, it gets a little bit lower. That is going to be a massive building right in my backyard. So again, that is a very, you know, individual, personal, I guess, objection to the size of that building right along the railroad tracks there. But it probably, looking at, you know, the other residents and how this is displayed on the graphic we got in the mail, probably myself and my neighbor next to me are going to be most impacted by those buildings, but it will be significant for me. I probably will have no sunlight in my backyard after 2 p.m. So just those were my biggest concerns. I'm not at all concerned about the infill. I think this is a great use of the space, and it's an attractive project, but I just think the density is a little too high.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public wishing to testify on this item tonight? So we have, I think, do we have a raised hand online? Yeah, okay, thanks. Please state your name and address when you're able.
Hi, my name is Alexandra Monjar. I live at 2222 West Kootenai Street. And I just want to say that I really appreciate this project. I'm excited to see more housing coming to the bench, and especially in this spot so close to Vista Village, and transit accessibility and Greenbelt and everything like that. I also really want to mention that I really appreciate the pathway on the south that connects Kootenai Street to Robert Street. I like to walk to Vista Village for daily trips for shopping, and it's sometimes I'll walk along the railroad just to have it a little bit more pleasant. So I'm excited to have an actual pathway to walk on there. So I appreciate that element of this design. And I also want to commend the developer for the unit mix. I think it's a great mix of unit sizes that'll encourage both families and students and young professionals. So I'm excited to have those neighbors. One thing I do want to recommend is I really think that the clubhouse entryway is well articulated with the canopy. And I noticed that there are the canopies on the complex buildings, but they're on the top story. I think that they would better mark the main entrances if they were on the main level. So just a comment of recommendation there. Otherwise, I think it's a great project. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public or here or online? Any else? Seeing none, would the applicant like to have any last words? You would? Yes. Do we have one more? Oh, great. If you would please state your name and address for the record when able.
Kelsey, if you unmute, you should be able to speak. Mr. Chairman, it looks like she's having some trouble unmuting, but we do have another member of the community, and I can work with Kelsey to see if we can get her unmuted.
That sounds good. Move on to the next. Again, please state your name and address when you're able.
Yes, my name is Natalie Dobbs, and I'm at 2294 West Kootenai. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Feel free to go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I just had a question really about traffic at Kootenai and how that will affect, the congestion that's already there. That was probably my biggest concern.
Thank you. We'll maybe see if the applicant can address that. Otherwise, staff can probably assist on findings on the traffic portion.
Hello, here's that lemonade for you, and then here's that food.
Mr. Chairman, I'm attempting to promote Kelsey to a panelist, and hopefully she could talk then.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Excellent. So I'm on my wife's account here, but my name is Kelby Sommer, and I'm at 1117 Shaw Drive.
Yep, go ahead.
Great. So I guess the primary question is related to since they restricted the access only to Robert Street for this development, what are the proposed improvements to Robert Street related with the development, considering it's unstriped, it's not, the width is, it's unimproved, unstriped, no curb and gutter, doesn't meet the 30-foot width requirements that are also in the ACHD code. So what's the, how's the project addressing the issues with the access road? And secondly, Robert Street is also a bikeway, and the designated bikeway that connects to Kootenai and then onto Federal Way to keep bike traffic off of Vista, since it's pretty unsafe to try and ride your bicycle down that. So how does the increased traffic affect that, the performance and the designation of Robert Street as a bikeway?
Great. We'll see if the applicant can address that as well. Joshua, if anybody else online wishing to testify?
Mr. Chairman, no.
Anybody else in the audience here wishing to testify tonight? Yes, sir. No, sir. You can, nope, you can feel free. Do you want to come forward and state your name? And yes. Yep. And if you would state your name and address when able.
My name is Sidney Kent Carney. I live at 820 Day Drive. I've lived there for the last 22 years. And I'm concerned about the congestion of the number of vehicles proposed for this, the amount of crossing space to get onto Robert and from Robert on and into Kootenai. I believe she said that they had a traffic survey done in, was it 2018? Times have changed. I have been through that intersection almost on a daily basis the last several years on a bicycle, and it's hazardous. It needs help. And the amount of vehicles that are proposed for this proposal, given the number of parking spaces that are allotted, is frightening. And I, as a local resident, I'm concerned about it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public wishing to testify? Don't see any online either. With that, I'd invite the applicant back forward to make any rebuttal. Additional comments?
Mr. Chair, Design Committee members, we do recognize that any development does increase the traffic in an area, and we, in working with ACHD through the CUP process, the property owner has understood, that there will be an increase here, and in that CUP application process, they did remove that secondary access at Kootenai, so all the traffic would be focused on Roberts. And there are some, I guess, things that we are going to be improving the roadway where we're going to create that access point. But as far as that crossing at the railroad tracks, because the railroad tracks do extend across Robert a little bit. However, unused, they are currently there. And so there is, I guess, Union Pacific would be kind of in charge of how to improve that specific area. One of the things that this property would, or this development would address, though, is some of that bike traffic along Roberts. Persons could now access this public drive and use that south walkway to bypass the busy intersection at Kootenai and Roberts, to take that down to Kootenai Street in a safe way away from vehicular traffic. Also in this development, not all of the occupants would be going to Roberts and Kootenai. Many would be going north up to Day Drive, which is a much larger intersection, and then out to Vista and maybe going downtown or up to Vista Village, accessing things that way. So we have tried to do what we can to mitigate some of this, but we also recognize that with development will increase traffic a little bit.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Simple.
I just had a couple questions. Thanks for addressing that traffic.
Mhm.
I know that that's been vetted through the initial PUD and then the CUP also. It's kind of outside our purview when it comes to traffic and what has to happen. I'm sure that I just want to ask, just as a formality, you're in agreement with the conditions of approval in the staff report?
Yes, we are.
Okay. And I'm assuming that extends to the ACHD staff report that you received as well.
Correct.
Okay. Touching on some specifics, how far offset are you from the railroad right of way? Do you know that off the top of your head?
For the buildings?
For the buildings, yes.
How far are we off from the railroad right of way for our buildings?
Like from your property line to the buildings that are along the east side?
All across the main.
Oh, that,
Main line?
yes, we are,
Yeah, along the 3-story step down to 2.
we're
and the
50
2
feet
50 feet.
plus another 20, right? Sorry, 70 feet.
Okay. And we saw the landscape plan briefly. I would assume you've got some pretty substantial landscaping that is going in there as well.
Let me open that back up. We do have a fence along that border and we do have some smaller shrubs. No major trees planned there to kind of help manage the views of the front range.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I would encourage you to look at some additional plantings that may help with the neighbors to the east.
Okay.
Specifically near those residences,
Sure.
just to protect some of the privacy from those 3rd-story and even 2nd-story buildings that would, and I don't feel like people tend to look in other people's yards, but there is the impression that their privacy is a little compromised. So I would just encourage you to look at that on your planting plan.
Yes. I think we can take a look at that. Yes.
Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, with that will close the public portion of the testimony here and bring it back to the committee for discussion and a motion. Yeah, it's a little bit hard to tell exactly, but if we looked at the first couple of pages on the zoning map, it looks like that most northern property kind of aligns with the southern 2/3-story building, maybe close, or the parking lot. Would be nice if those were included maybe on the aerial, but there you can kind of see. So there's the transportation service building, the commercial building there at the very top on the north end of Pico. And then it sounds like the next one south from that was 107, which is probably the most impacted from the 3-story. But if I looked at that, it's maybe a third of the way up that line. And compared to the site plan, looks like that's yeah, just about where that 2nd and 3rd-story building are, just as a correlation. And as they stated, it looked like there was a 25-foot easement on the actual train tracks itself. And then did you say there's another 20? I think it was another 25 on each side. So whether it's 70 to 75 feet on the easement, plus a little bit more of a setback from the actual property line to the building, a little bit more distance from the residents to their back of their house. So, it could be 150 or so feet building to building. So just a couple of those items maybe for discussion and reference.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I just, to start the conversation, I, for one, am very much in favor of the infill redevelopment of this parcel. I think it's a very unique parcel. I'm sure working with the railroad was time-consuming effort. From what I understand, they operate by mail only, and which can be challenging. And it looks like they've found a way to get some good density in here. They found a way to access across these train tracks. It's a challenging site, and I feel like they've done a really great job at finding a way to redevelop this. It's again, very unique situation. So that's really what I wanted to add. It sounds like they're addressing some of the issues. I do like that pathway because Kootenai is getting busier.
It does provide for an off-street way to access between there. So that's what the comments I'd like to make on this.
Yeah, I don't know if
Part of the
there's
motion.
anything else on our comments that we could say about the northern pathway that just kind of runs off towards a dead end. I think there were some good comments of whether there's an opportunity to cross the tracks in a more formal pedestrian crossing with the northernmost 22 plex. I don't know if that's anything we needed a condition, but something they might want to look into.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think that's really, it's something that I think that the applicant could explore. I'm not sure if there's a way to get from that over to Day Drive. If there's any opportunity there to work with the property owner to try to get access through there for pedestrian only access, that might provide some additional connection. I don't know if we can condition that or not, but because I feel like they're meeting the condition of approval that F in our staff report. And yeah, again, with the railroad, I'm sure that they want as few people trying to cross there. There may be people that run across it. There probably is now. So.
Okay. Other comments from the committee? Anybody want to take a stab at a motion?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I might as well keep going. I would move to approve DRH 22-00066 as recommended in the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the recommended conditions of approval noted in the project report.
Thank you. So moved by Mr. Simple.
Second.
Seconded. Thank you, Mr. Erstad. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Christina, will you please call the roll?
Simple,
Aye.
Zabala,
Aye.
Marsh,
Aye.
Aguilar,
Aye.
Erstad.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Great. Thank you very much. Next item to be heard tonight is item number 8. It's DRH 22-00078. Locations 8375 West Victory Road for the construction of a multifamily residential development totaling 301 units, a clubhouse building, and associated site improvements. And with that, I will turn it over to Caitlin for the staff report.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this project is located at 8373 West Victory Road. So we are bounded by Victory Road on the north, and then Trabuco Avenue on the west, and then Milwaukee Lane on the east. And this area consists of a mix of uses. So we have some school district facilities to the south. There's some single family residential to the west. There's some additional residential and some office and storage uses further north. The applicant is proposing a 301 unit multifamily project. They've located 2 larger tuck under buildings at the corner of Milwaukee Lane and Victory Road. Just so you know, north is on your left here, on your left here. And then they have arrangements of smaller groupings of townhouse style buildings throughout the development, and then an amenity area towards the center. So this shows the height of the different buildings. So you have the taller buildings, the 3-story in the green, and then the 2-story are the red. So they've placed the shorter buildings near the residential across Trabuco, and then the larger buildings are up along Victory and Milwaukee Lane. So here are the elevations and floor plan for that building 1 along Victory. Staff has recommended a couple conditions regarding providing a visible entry on Victory, and then also, because the facade is so long, providing a more substantial vertical element that breaks up the facade. And then similarly along Milwaukee Lane, we recommended they introduce one larger element that just breaks up that longer facade. just to reduce the appearance of any monotony. And then the smaller groupings of buildings interior, some of them are back-to-back townhouse style. They have a couple different groupings. So there's some 12-plex, and then some 8-plex, and then some smaller groupings of that townhouse style. And I believe the applicant is in agreement with all of our recommended conditions, and they are available to give a presentation. So I can turn it over to them.
Great. Thanks, Caitlin. Any questions for the staff at the moment? Seeing none, if the applicant would please come forward, and if you would, please state your name and address for the record.
Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Deborah Nelson and my address is 601 West Bannock Street. I just wanted to greet you, let you know I'm here in the audience if you have questions, but our architect is online.
Okay.
Rob Cottle with Babcock Engineers, excuse me. And also our applicant, Alex Drexel with Layton Construction is online as well. So all three of us are available to answer questions and Rob's going to give a presentation.
Great, thank you.
All right, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. I was just getting over the excitement of being promoted to a panelist, so sorry for the delay. Let me, can I share my screen? Is that possible?
I believe so. One moment. There you go.
Okay. Let me tell me when you can see that. Are you able to see that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so as was stated, our project is a 301 unit development located on Victory Road between Trabuco and Milwaukee Street, Milwaukee Lane, excuse me. The site plan, as you go in, currently the land is vacant. These are some views of the land from a few months back, showing the location. This is our most current site plan, and as was stated, what we have is the way we've arranged the site is to be good neighbors and to be respectful of the scale of the neighborhood. We've located the two-story 3 and 4-plex townhome product around the south and predominantly west side, a little bit on the east side of the perimeter of the site. Those are 2-story rear-loaded units with garages. I'll show you elevations here in a minute. And as you move inward on the site, the density increases slightly, where you now go to a 3-story back-to-back townhome product on these inboard units. And on the corner of Victory Road and Milwaukee, we do have 2 tuck under 3-story apartment buildings that have the highest amount of density. The parking, excuse me, before I move forward, we also have the centralized amenity area with a clubhouse noted on item number 7 here. There will be a pool. There's various amenities, dog parks, playgrounds, barbecue pits, pickleball court, and those sorts of amenities. Some of those are being finalized. The other thing I'd like to point out is the way we're dealing with the interior streets between the townhomes. You can see the paving pattern in the site plan is different. What we're wanting to do there is it's a concept. It's a funny name, but it's called a woonerf. It's a Dutch concept where basically by changing the paving pattern and eliminating the curbs, at the back of these units, it becomes a more pedestrian friendly site. And this is an example, a rendering of what this looks like. So you can see you have the regular paving of the street, but when you get back to the private alleys between the townhomes, yes, you can drive your car back there, and that's how you access the garages. But the idea is the paving is different on purpose because it's really meant to be used by the pedestrians primarily. So it becomes a secondary play area. The change in paving and the lack of asphalt back there, psychologically, it tells you when you're driving that you're now in a different area. It slows down traffic and it makes a more pleasant public space from an aesthetic point of view. So the way the project is basically designed is that a large majority of the parking is being handled in garages. So we have a lot of garage space. Excuse me. For the majority of the units, we do have some surface stalls, but even under what we're calling the tuck under, the back side, there's a series of garages as well, and then also bicycle storage and parking. We're aware of the bicycle parking requirement for the city of Boise, and the way we're proposing to address that is in all of the private garages for all of the units, installing bicycle hooks for those residents, since it's most likely that most people would like to store their bikes on their own property. But there will also be satellite bike racks spread throughout the site as well to accommodate that. And if we do put those in all of the garages, we're well over 50% of the bike parking required would be covered. You've seen this this diagram. This just shows the scale, the height of the building, showing how we start with a lower scale around the neighborhood and move inward to a higher density. This is just a quick parking diagram showing all the garage parking that's available. The red are the private garages of the townhome units. The blue are the tuck under units in the apartment building. We have gone through preliminary layouts of waste removal showing we're intending traditional personal bins for the townhome units, much like at a regular home. But for the tuck under building, just because of the number of units, we're going with the trash chutes and interior trash rooms. There's a diagram at the bottom here showing there will be a compactor and bins as well. We're working with the city of Boise to get the details for that as we move into design. This just shows, it's just a diagram showing the walking paths and the distances to the local schools. It's ideally suited for that, for walking. And then these are just the pathway system that we have diagrammed around the site here. So there's an external pathway that goes down Victory Lane and down Milwaukee. One of the conditions of the approval from the last meeting was the 10-foot wide multi-use pathway that will go down Trabuco. And that will be usable for both bikes and pedestrians, and will be not, rather than a bike lane in the street, it will be actually on the landscape portion. So you have further safety and separation from vehicles. One of the other items was a bus stop requirement on Milwaukee. So diagrammatically here at the top's an enlarged plan showing that, and some visual examples of what that might look like. We have yet to get into the design on that, but that's just an indication of generally what we're thinking. This is the planting plan. I won't go into detail on this, but we do have landscape architecture on the team. They have done this preliminary plan. It's our understanding that all the existing trees on the site are to be removed just because of, they've been deemed not suitable for the new development. So all of the planting will be brand new with trees down Victory, Milwaukee, and Trabuco, and a significant amount of planting, as you can see if I zoom in around all of the buildings, especially fronting the outside edges and the other neighborhoods. This is an enlargement of the clubhouse area. Number one here is the Clubhouse Building. It's kind of an L-shaped building with a 2-story element and then a 1-story element as well. We're looking at a 25-meter pool that could be used for lap and retainment type swimming, a hot tub and a pool deck, bike racks, playgrounds, dog park, fitness lawn, and we're still looking at locations for pickleball courts and that sort of amenity as well. These are just very quickly, these are the townhome floor plan types. All the townhomes are 2 and 3 bedroom units. And in the apartments, just taking a second to load up, oh, excuse me, before I go to the apartments. So this is the typical elevation, conceptual elevation of the 2-story townhomes along Trabuco and along the south edge of the property as well. So you can see the scale is very residential, very nearly identical to the scale across the street. The elevation that faces the neighborhood is the side that doesn't have the garages. The garages are actually loaded from the interior of the project. So, you know, they look very much like standard residential homes, both in finish, architectural expression, and scale. We do have the back-to-back units inboard that are 3-story units. They're also 2 and 3 bedroom product. They have a little bit more of a metropolitan sort of feel, higher density units. And you can see we have 8 plexes, 12 plexes of those unit types. Again, using a similar palette, our palette of materials is in kind of the grays, browns, kind of earth tones. We want to create some interest and contrast to break up the facades. There is some depth relief for shadows to give it interest as well, and to also set the units apart. This is the floor plan of the first tuck under building. We are aware of the condition to add some vertical elements to this. We are accepting of that and working on some schemes right now that we'd like to show at a later point how we're addressing that. But we agree that that will be a benefit to this project. So looking at breaking up this facade so we don't have a continuous flat line, changing, altering and moderating the height of the parapet, and also having a more significant entry element, both from Victory and from Milwaukee as well. This is kind of a back view of the L-shaped building. So there's a little bit of a perspective there. This is the second building, which in the apartment buildings, we have 4 unit types. We have a studio, a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, and then a 3-bedroom corner unit. And then several tuck under garages. There will also be some interior amenity space within this apartment building as well. And then this is the clubhouse plan, the preliminary plan thus far. Basically, the leasing office is right when you first come into the building. We have a small leasing office space and some management space. There's a parcel room for Amazon and UPS deliveries for the tenants. There is a small meeting room and event room that can be leased out. There's a gymnasium, and then kind of a large common area room, kitchen, fireplace, kind of public hangout area. We do have bathrooms and showers for the pool. And then we've got some maintenance and storage and equipment rooms for the pool room on the ground level. On the upper level, there's some more public space, a dining hall upstairs, and then also an outdoor patio over the one-story portion of the clubhouse. And then these are some preliminary elevations of what that looks like. Again, similar palette, and it's situated so it's kind of the first thing you see when you come into the development. The lower element in the white stucco element, that's where the gymnasium and the functions for the pool support would be. And this is just a sample of some of the material palette that we're looking at thus far. This isn't necessarily the limit of our palette, but this shows a range of the sort of tones and textures we're going for. These sorts of projects we feel are very important to, they need to blend in. So going with earth tones and natural materials are good, both from an aesthetic point of view, but the owner of this project is a long-term holder of their buildings. And so having durable, permanent materials that age well and are easy to maintain and make the buildings last much longer, that's certainly an important factor in the choice of materials. But the idea is to have enough materials that we can create variety and interest so that everything doesn't look the same, but also using palettes of materials that blend in seamlessly with the surrounding neighborhood. And that is it. Any questions?
Got a couple. Anybody else want to start though? Yes.
Mr. Chair, where is all the mechanical equipment going? Where is that? Is it on the roof? Is it outside on the side of the buildings?
So we have not yet determined the mechanical system for all the units yet. However, we're anticipating that there will be some rooftop mechanical for the larger apartment building just due to the scale of the project, and we probably will have some condensers on the roof, but our intention is to have those fully screened. In the townhome product, we're anticipating that the majority of those mechanical units will be contained within the units themselves, and things like compressors and transformers will be ground mounted and screened with landscaping.
I had a quick question on the topography of the site. I know the school administration office, sits fairly significantly higher than Victory Road does, but I didn't see how you're addressing grades with some of these long buildings as you're going up what could be 20 feet of grade change across the site.
That's certainly something we're keeping in mind as we look at the project. There may be some step in the elevation, which would help also with the concern with the continuous flat elevation. We're honestly not far enough along in the design process where we've set the actual elevations for the buildings yet, but certainly that's something we want to make sure that we're addressing, because the intent is not to create a lot of cut and fill for the site.
Another concern maybe was the view down Trabuco. I think there is a rendering down that view. Are basically all of those buildings pretty much exactly the same and same color scheme?
Well, they're generally they're similar layouts, but the intention is to use a palette of materials. We have both kind of some gray palette and some brown palette type materials. As you go down, so you have a series, if you can still see my screen, you do have a series of these buildings as you go down Trabuco. The idea is that they'll be similar in look, but the intention is not to make them identical. So we would vary the color palette. And there may be some opportunities, architecturally speaking, with some of the gables and things like that to have some minor alterations to add a little more variety to the elevations.
Yeah, I think that would be an important thing to look at. I know that's probably close to 1,000 feet of road frontage to have the same exact building with the same colors, which I think is basically what's in the proposal now. Might be a little repetitive, you might say.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the other things we had in our work session, I think it was a Babcock Design earlier today, we did talk a little bit more about some of the window details too. I didn't know if you included kind of how you address the offset for the windows.
I guess more specific, I'm not sure I'm clear on your question.
What kind of a trim or, basically on your window, the offset from the glass to the wall plane?
Yeah, I mean, the idea, this is a conceptual drawing, but I'll zoom in. I mean, the idea is having a trim piece around the window opening and then recessing the frame in a couple of inches to create a nice shadow line. A punched window has it has a nicer look if we can slightly recess it. And I think that's the general intent here. I mean, the other thing we're trying to do in these early elevations, it's kind of hard to read it, but there's a lot of plane change going on in these elevations. On the end units this wall is quite proud of this other wall back here. This recedes back quite a ways, as you can see the slope of this lower roof. And then these dormers, these white dormers on the middle units, they come back out. So there's a lot of in and out on these buildings, a lot of horizontal relief, as well as the architectural features. So we feel that there's, in effect, quite a lot going on with these buildings. We do agree that creating a variety of color palettes to mix them up a little bit, we'd be in agreement with that.
Yeah, this building, like I say, has a little more undulation. I think the other buildings that you had where you kind of had the alleyway between them. The only thing I didn't see on here that was kind of similar to more the work session ones we had earlier is just the scoring pattern in the stucco, and it just seems to be maybe a little lack of detail, maybe like that gray number 2 area.
Yeah, and in all fairness, we haven't we're not that far into it yet in that level of detail, I should say. I mean, we are looking at elements like belt courses and cornices, and then again, these also step. Looking back, you can see that in plan, there's the doors go recess quite a ways in. The 4 garage doors on either side are not all in the same plane as well, and then you get a variation as you move up the building. But adding some scoring, we agree that would help articulate the scale of the building a little bit better, and that's something as we move into design a little farther, we'll certainly have that level of detail.
Okay. And is there any commercial space in this proposal? I don't think I saw any.
No.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you. Are there any members of the public wishing to testify on this? Anybody online, Josh? No. Any other remarks from the applicant at all?
None for me.
Great. Thanks. Well, we'll close the public portion of the testimony and bring it back to the committee for discussion and a motion.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
In general, I'm okay with this project, but I have a lot of concerns that I think Well, a couple of them are already addressed in the site-specific conditions, but I think I'd feel better to see this come back at 50%. And so comments for the applicant, things I'd like to see you guys take another look at. And I think we've hit them all already, but just to recap is I'm concerned with the roof lines at the center of the project. Those elevations, you talked about scoring there. I'd like to see how you develop that. I'd like to know exactly where the mechanical equipment's going and how you're going to treat that in terms of screening in the event that whether it's on the roof or on site. I think there could be a cool opportunity to take advantage of the grade change. So I'd like to see some civil plans on how you address that. Rhetorical question, how are you dealing with stormwater? Is that all subsurface or swales? And then the Trabuco, is that how you say that street? I'm concerned about those elevations there in terms of, I'd like to see that again and see if we can break that up a little more. So I think you're going in the right direction and trying to get a residential feel. And I'd like to see if we can break that up a little more to make it a little, maybe a block looks a little different, block of homes looks a little differently. But I think you're heading in the right direction there. And that's all the comments that I have.
Good. I'd agree. Anybody else have some comments?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I could kind of see where it was going during the conversation and the questions with the applicant that I think that we all agree we were going to ask them to come back at, a further level of design development so we can get some of these details. Color palette is really important here. I think that ties into the facades and those elevations along Trabuco. I think that the grade change is really important here too. It's going to help step those building facades some. The window systems, the stucco scoring, mechanical systems and screening, as committee member Aguilar already touched on. But yeah, generally, I like the density of it. I think it's a great spot for this. There's schools in the area. There's, work opportunities in the area that will really, this will promote some walkability out here where there's really not a whole lot of that going on right now. So, one of us is going to end up adding that condition. So whoever makes the motion. Anyway, that's all my comments.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Stead.
I just want to make a comment that I appreciate that this isn't entirely kind of a pseudo residential style. I think that by and large, we've seen in this valley way too many 4-story buildings with pitched roofs that don't take their own scale into account when they kind of arbitrarily select what they slap on the side. I think that it's nice to see a little bit more of a urban style, but more importantly, I think that the fact that we've got some, reflective roofs out in the middle of the desert, rather than just a whole bunch more asphalt, contributing to the urban heat island effect. I don't know that we necessarily bring that up in this discussion quite often enough, especially when there are a whole lot of rooftops going in. So I just want to be on the record as saying I appreciate the fact that was a design decision that was made, and I hope to see more of it in the future.
Yeah, I'd agree that, I think there's a good mix between going from the administration building, which is a commercial building, flat roof, and kind of transitioning that over to the rest of the neighborhood. And certainly not opposed to the color palette that they have. I just would suggest a little bit more variation, because that one color palette over this size of a development would be a little much. But yeah, with that, anybody want to take a stab at a motion?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to add one more thing. The Wernif, I've actually seen a couple different times. I think it's a really cool concept. It does introduce a more pedestrian use within those alleys that a lot of times get forgotten. So I do want to mention that is I really commend the applicant on incorporating that into here, because I don't think it's used enough. So.
All right. We took the best notes now, the last couple of minutes. Basically, I heard mechanical screening concerns, topographic, how to address the topographic change, looking at color palette variations, especially along Trabuco, more specific window trim and stucco details. I think if there was one other one, that's all I had.
Mr. Chair, the
Yes.
window details, I think, are already
Covered in the
covered in the
conditions.
site-specific conditions.
So we're on the parapet, wall height changes and more. Yeah, I think all of those conditions are good. Josh, do we need to do this to a date specific or it can be open? It can be open. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, we just usually say future public work session. It's pretty difficult for them to turn around things in time for the next month's hearing. And beyond that, we have no idea when it would be. So I just say a future public work session and we'll advertise it just like any other design review hearing.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Stead.
I move to approve DRH 22-00078 contingent upon a public work session when their drawings have reached 50% completion to account for the aforementioned design criteria.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Would that be an added condition L to return to a public work session at a future date with those 50% design development drawings?
Sure.
I will second that.
Okay, I'm so moved by Mr. Stead, seconded by Mr. Simple. Discussion on the motion. Do we want to make it specific to a 50% or just at the time when the applicant can respond to the comments, I guess?
I think that that's kind of been the typical verbiage, but at such time as all design questions can be answered, that would suit me just fine too.
Sounds good.
I'm in agreement.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Christina, you do a roll call vote?
Simple,
Aye.
Zabala,
Aye.
Marsh,
Aye.
Aye.
Aguilar, Erstad,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Great. Thanks, everybody. And with that, we are adjourned.